Parmajoba. That's my one word I know. So yeah, like I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for the invite. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, the Touch community. Proud to be here from California. Today, I want to talk about the power of business design and how to drive innovation and growth. So, quick intro about, well, agenda for today, intro about me, what is business design, fundamental principles of business design, why business design is essential today, and then how to apply it. And maybe we'll have enough time for questions at the end. So really quickly, I am a lead product designer. I focus on global conversion and monetization at Netflix, which is pretty much acquisition and retention-based projects, growing subscribers, making sure we're bringing in revenue, and making sure that we're keeping our customers happy is always first and foremost. But I've been in design for about 20 years. I'm a self-taught designer. I did go to college for engineering, but I realized that I always had a passion for design, so I chose to go that route. I've had 3 startups. I had an agency, a CMS for independent brands, and a video conferencing platform. Prior to Netflix, I was at Coursera, which is a education platform. I'm really big on education. That's why I'm here today as well. And I'm also like a VC, a mentor, a startup advisor, and just in case you wanted to know, I do not get free Netflix. I do not get free Netflix. Nobody gets free Netflix at the company. Everybody has to pay for it. So I always tell people that because a lot of people ask me that question. But I pay for it proudly because it's a product that I work on, so I don't mind paying for it. But before I get started, quick quiz. No prize for this, though. No free Netflix. Just want to see if you know any of these answers. How many current subscribers does Netflix have? A, B, C, D. D. Okay, nice. Next one. How many hours did subscribers watch Squid Game? B. Whoa, that's somebody got the answer to this test already? Yes, 1.56 billion hours. Can you believe that? Think about how long that is of people. Yes, B, 1.56 billion hours. How old is Netflix? D, 26. Y'all are doing good. I'm proud of. Go ahead. All right, now this is a tricky one, though. 4. What was Netflix's original name? A, B, C, or D? D? It's actually B. I don't know why. That's the tricky one for me because in the United States, kibble is dog food. So I don't know why Netflix's first name was the dog food name, but it ultimately got changed to Netflix. And then lastly, what year did Netflix start streaming? C. Wow, you got ChatGPT open? Did you ChatGPT these answers? Nobody's ever got them all right that quick. Well, great. I'm excited. That makes me feel like y'all are engaged. Okay, so what is business design? Now, let me preface this by saying everything you hear from speakers, that's their own personal interpretation of something, right? So this is my interpretation of what I think business design is. And it's the intersection of business strategy, innovation, and design thinking. So it's pretty much like that sweet little spot right there in between all of them is business design. And it's a human-centered approach focused on deeply understanding customer and business needs. So kind of like what we was talking about in the panel before where Becca was asking how do we make that decision, it's this very, very delicate balance that we're always juggling because you as our users are very important to us, but also making the company successful is important to us. So that's why we're always thinking about both of those pretty much equally at the same time, but even sometimes we're thinking about the customer even more because without the customer, we won't have the business. So it's not like we can just always put Netflix before you all because there's a ton of competition. You can leave Netflix and go to another platform immediately. So we can't just say, oh, they'll come back. So we spend a lot of time making sure we're always focused on what's best for the customer and what's best for the business. So, like as y'all heard me saying I said you need to start in Google Docs. Why? Because you need to be asking yourself questions like these. Like these are the questions that I'm coming to the table for any project that I'm working on. What are our goals and what metrics will be used to track success? What is important to our users And how can we create a seamless and engaging customer experience across all touch points? What are the current market trends? How might they evolve in the future? And how can we design a business model to be scalable, sustainable, and adaptable to change? And then finally, what are potential revenue streams and how can we optimize them? These questions are super critical because if you don't have answers to these, what are you really doing? Do you really know what you're doing or where you're going? I feel like you're making assumptions that could be right, but could really be wrong, but could have been right if you would have asked these questions. So at the beginning, as a business designer, I'm thinking these type of questions. When I was getting started in my design career, I was never asking these kind of questions. I didn't even, what metrics? What are you talking about? Why are we not opening up Photoshop? Why are we not opening up? Don't you want to see some JPEG? Don't you want to see some animation or something like that? And there's a time and a place for that, but when you're developing or when you're designing at a company the size with the scale and the amount of users as Netflix, you kind of need to slow down and make sure that you know what's going on from the beginning. So another part about business design is team diversity. And I'm so happy to say that at Netflix, I work with some of the best and smartest people on the planet. And I like to use this graphic because this is what I feel like about my team. We all have individual skills that make us stars, but there's not one person that's more important than the other. It's a collaborative union of us, and we're over 100 people that work on the monetization team, and we're mixed up of designers, product managers, front-end, back-end engineers, researchers, design ops, data science, program managers, product creative, content design, globalization, finance. So you see how much more complicated this can be, but that's because we're trying to solve huge problems, and I don't want to come up with the answers to those questions on my own. Luckily, I don't have to. I work with all of these amazing people, and we come up with these together, and that's how we all feel as if we're all vested in this each step of the way, as opposed to just one person tells us to do something and everybody's just followers. There's no followers. It feels like we're all one team moving towards this bigger goal of making sure Netflix is an amazing platform for you all so you'll stay, which will ultimately lead in Netflix being successful. So another thing that's really important for us is globalization. And why do I say that? Because we're a global company. We're in 190 countries, and because of that, we need to support as many languages as possible, because similar to Jimmy's talk earlier, inclusion is important. If you don't have an inclusive project, then that means you probably have an exclusive project, and that means you're actually working against the idea of growing your product, your idea, your business, or whatever. So we take globalization very, very serious. Here's an example. We have 62 languages on the platform that we support. We have 38 plus languages that we have subtitles for, and we also have 33 languages in our UI that we support. And why do we put so much time into this? Because we don't want a user to open up Netflix and feel like this is not for them. We don't want you to open up Netflix and say, why don't you support my language, or do you think my language doesn't matter? We don't want any of those thoughts. So we put as much time into saying every language is important. English, Spanish, Japanese, French. We support it all, and I think that's an amazing part of why we're able to be so global as opposed to just only be a US company that only has English-speaking customers. So to help with the globalization, this is an amazing product that we have, which is called Pseudoloc. And what we did is we came up with our own internal font that kind of mimics more of a global language. When you think about English, it's a very short language. 26 characters. If you see, there's no accents, there's no multiple versions of any letters, right? That's not really true about global languages. They more represent things like this, where the characters may be longer. So if you think of a word that in English may only be 7 letters, you think of another language, it might be 10, it might be 12. So now a design that was only designed for English won't work in the other 32 languages that we have to support. So how do we solve things like that? by coming up with something like pseudoloc, where now the design team, when we're finished with something in English, we can immediately test it in pseudoloc before we get to engineering. Because once we give it to engineering and they start building this, you don't want engineering to come back and say, hey, this doesn't work in Arabic. Hey, this doesn't work in Georgian. Hey, this doesn't work in that. You want engineer to build, let you see the test, and everything be good to go, and you ship it. So here's an example of that. This is a very important page for us as a company. Why? Because this is the page that you see when we rolled out no password sharing anymore. This is the page that shows up on the TV that converts you over to paying for this extra member, right? So any page that is tied to any kind of payment, we take extra serious. So if this was on your TV, this looks fine. There's nothing wrong with this. Ship it, right? Actually, wrong. Don't ship this. Look at how the difference between these two when we translated it into pseudoloc. And this is what could have happened in another language. And what we can't have happen is we roll this out, and then you users open this on your TV and you say, what is going on with Netflix? I'm not used to seeing a messy design like this. Is the design broken? Or worse, did they not think about my language? Was my language not important to them? So that's why we spend so much time, so no matter what language somebody's opening in, you can enjoy the platform, and we can definitely do our job, which is converting you to be a paying user. So what we would do is we would see this and say, there's some work that needs to be done. Do we want to either change the design, which could be complicated because this is a TV, and on TV there's not as much space? Do you want to work with the content design team to maybe shorten the copy, and then you can shorten a copy, which would most likely fix something like this? Or you can say, do we want to completely change the whole design? But I would still rather do all of that in-house before it gets to the public. So this is one example of how we take globalization so serious, and you can see it in action. So fundamental principles of business design. As I said before, Netflix has 260 million users in 190 countries. So we have to start with empathy. Every single project I start with, I'm asking those questions, and I'm immediately thinking about all of you users, because you are counting on us to constantly deliver you an amazing experience. And to do that, you have to have empathy. So we're thinking about all the different ways people use Netflix, whether it's kids, whether it's parents, whether you're on a plane, whether you're traveling, whether you're on your phone, whether on your TV, you're on a laptop. We're always thinking of all these different use cases because all of them matter. And similar to what Jimmy said earlier, it's not even just that they're edge cases, they're important use cases. Just because it may not be the main use case, that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be respected and it should be considered as an edge case. So we put so much time into making sure that we care about our users because we want everybody to have an amazing experience. And a really good quote is, empathy is the starting point for creating breakthrough products and services. If you're not having empathy for the people that you're solving their problem for, then you can kind of ask yourself, like, what are you really doing at that moment? Because you're not solving their problem because you're not even thinking about them. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we're thinking about our users. So here's a quick example. This was our landing page on TV for about 15 years. And this was a very successful page for us. This is the page you see when you opened up your TV, whether you just got a new TV or you finally installed the app on your TV. And it worked. It got us to, like I said, over 100 million users. But what we realized as the monetization team is we were losing a lot of users that got to this page. There was something wrong. We wasn't converting them the way we should. And it felt like it was simple enough. Watch TV shows and movies anytime, anywhere, join now. But what we realized was there was a lot of people coming to this page, and they were having questions that we were not answering. And by not answering the questions, they were big enough questions for somebody to not feel comfortable signing up for the platform. So that's my job, that's my team's job to figure out, well, how do we fix that? So we started on an expedition of how do we update the landing page on TV? And you gotta think big, but you gotta start small. So how do we start on something like this? We get the team together and we start asking these critical questions. What should our pitch tell non-members. Not what's it gonna look like, not what do we show, because that'll come later. What should we be telling members? And then second, how should we tell this Netflix story? After we figure out what should we be telling them, it's like, how are we gonna tell them now? Now you start to get into maybe a little more of the creative side of, let's start thinking some ideas. You can see a couple sketches coming around. And then you get to the point where now you've created 5 different directions. We don't know which direction is gonna work. We don't wanna know which direction is gonna work immediately because we wanna be creative. We wanted to get our ideas out there like you've seen from some of the other presenters. So we go and we come up with these 5 different explorations. They all have different themes. They all have different motives, and they all have different value props, but they all have the same ultimate goal, which is to convert users. So what do we do from here? We take these 5, and we don't pick and say, well, I like B, so let's do B. What we say is, now it's time to test all 5 of these ideas with users and learn from them. Because once again, it's all about user empathy. So we did a test, and only 2 of them actually ended up standing strong, which was concept B and concept E. The other concepts in user research, we found some good feedback. People thought some of the ideas were like kind of creepy and confusing, and it didn't really help them understand what Netflix wanted, so we scrapped those ideas. We kept these 2, and then we came up with one more idea that we felt would still maybe resonate with the users. So we take these 3 concepts and we test them. And this is an example of what a test will look like. The first option is what I showed you, which is the no video. Then the second one would be concept B. Concept E would have a male or female voiceover. Then we have concept Z, which was the new idea that we came up with. And then the test 6, 7, and 8 are other things that we would try to learn from this test. Because this was such a huge global project, we wanted to try to learn as much as we can. We don't usually have this many cells in a test because it starts to get muddy and cloudy with things, but for this one, we kind of had no choice because there was no going back once we started on this project. So here's the example, the final result. So, why is that video great? Thank you. Why is that video so amazing? Because the number one thing it did right is it answered all the questions that people had before. The motion and everything, all of that, that's second. It looks great, the audio's custom, you can swap in and out, I hear all that. But why is that video successful? Why am I up here showing you all today? Is because when people came to the platform, they didn't have those questions before that would stop them from signing up. We had finally found a way to communicate with users in a way where now they felt comfortable clicking that sign up button. But just a little bit of the stuff that we put into our products to make sure that they're inclusive and scalable is every thumbnail that you saw was dynamically loaded from the back end, which means we can update all of those thumbnails as soon as a new title comes out. So we need to be thinking ahead like that so that every time somebody comes to the platform, you're seeing new content, as well as this video can be localized for wherever a user is opening up the platform from. So if you're opening it up in the States, you'd see one set of thumbnails. If you opened it up in Europe, you see another. If you opened it up in Asia, you'd see a different one. And that's the kind of complexity that we put into our work because we needed to scale, as well as all of the text that you saw can be translated into those 33 languages that I told you that we support, and this all can be done dynamically. So we're always thinking like big ways to solve these problems because we have so many users. So this project was extremely successful for us. It ended up bringing in about an extra $30 million a year, and I'm proud of that because, like I said, I started I got out of college and said I wanted to be a designer, And after working hard years later, now I'm able to say I'm working on projects that's actually bringing in millions and millions of dollars. But I'm more happy that it showed that we knew how to solve the problems for our users. The money sounds great, but we wouldn't have got the money if we didn't take the time to really understand what our users wanted. So the part about business design of just making sure that you have that user empathy and you're thinking big, but you're starting small is like a really, really strong principle. And then lastly, co-creation. Like I said before, we do a ton of qualitative research. We do so much research. I'm actually doing research sessions in 2 weeks, one for the US and one for Brazil, because we do so much talking to you all because we don't want to come up with these assumptions on our own. So here's some quick examples. 375 studies across 55 countries, 13,750 people attended in-person events. We consulted on over 200 plus titles on the platform. 45 million people participated in quantitative surveys. So we feel confident about the stuff that we're rolling out because we always are talking to the users. You're gonna hear me say that over and over again. There is no situation where we're just gonna roll something out and just say, we hope people like it. Because if you don't like it, a company as big and as popular as Netflix can really take a massive hit. We can lose billions of dollars by one wrong mistake. So we do the best we can to avoid that through experimentation and through tons of research. So I like the concept of co-creation because it feels like we're working with our users to make these solutions and come up with these products for you all. Here's some examples of all the different places that I've been fortunate enough to do research in. Costa Rica, Finland, Switzerland, Philippines, Brazil, Australia, Argentina, and you get to learn amazing things like even though Australia and New Zealand are so close to each other, they think nothing alike. But you wouldn't think that because you're like, well, they're kind of close, so they probably got some similarities. When we did the research, it was like they were on two different sides of the world. And if we didn't do that research, we wouldn't have known that, and we would have probably spoken to the New Zealanders the same way we spoke to the Australians, which would have been probably worked against our favor. So this is why co-creation and quantitative and qualitative research is just so important for us at Netflix. And why is business design essential? This is a great story. So some of you may know, some of you may not know. In the United States, there was a video rental company named Blockbuster. This was before Netflix, where they rented VHS tapes. I know some of you are young and you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But before DVDs, there was something called like a VHS tape, right? So Blockbuster rented them out, and it was one time in American culture that Blockbuster was the spot to go to every Friday. Most of the videos would be sold out because everybody was going on a Friday. They had got to a point where they had 9,000 retail locations. That's how big Blockbuster got. And in 2000, Netflix offered itself to Blockbuster for $50 million. And Blockbuster declined the offer. Fast forward to 2007, Netflix announces that it will launch streaming video. Netflix delivers its billionth DVD and begins to move away from its original core business model of mailing DVDs by introducing video on demand via the internet. And by 2014, Blockbuster had closed all its locations. So it went from 9,000 locations to 0. Why? Because it didn't understand that technology moves fast. It got so comfortable with being that powerhouse, it didn't see around the corner. It didn't embrace the internet. It just thought it was going to be able to stay at the top where it was forever. And now there are no Blockbusters open in the United States, and Netflix is the #1 streaming platform, as well as Netflix now has a market cap of about $270 billion. They tried to sell to Blockbuster for $50 million. So when you're making your products, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, make sure you're thinking ahead. Like, be 5 steps ahead of your competitors, please, because if not, you don't want to be another company like Blockbuster that was successful, and then overnight, it was not successful. So here's another example of how Netflix evolves, though. We ultimately decided in September 2023 that we're going to stop even renting DVDs. Why? because the ROI, which is the return on investment, it just wasn't worth it anymore for DVDs. We're the king, queen of streaming, so why would we still support DVDs? Now, we did have some customers who love DVDs, and we're sorry that we had to discontinue that service for them, but we're focused more on making sure we're delivering the best streaming opportunity that we can, so we ultimately had to shut down our DVD. I like this example because this is what prevents us from becoming Blockbuster. If you try to keep doing the DVDs, even though you know the DVDs aren't working, it's like, are you really paying attention to the business? Are you really paying attention to the future? So we only do streaming now, and we're great at it, as opposed to still trying to figure out how to send these DVDs to a small population of our users. Increased competition. In 2017, there were 4 streaming platforms. I think it was Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and one more. And now when you think of 2024, this isn't even half of the streaming platforms. So within 16 years, the amount of streaming platforms have almost 30, 40x. So now we understand that there's a ton of competition out here, but does the competition scare us? No, but it makes us aware that you all have options if you want to go somewhere other than Netflix. So what does that mean for us? We have to increase the value that we offer you guys and make sure that we're always being innovative and evolving customer experiences. Like, for example, now Netflix, we're venturing into live events, which is exciting for us. Most of our stuff has previously been pre-recorded. We just did a amazing match between Rafael Nadal, like I forgot the other guy's name, but I'm sure somebody's gonna know. Right. So we did this on the platform, which is amazing because it brings a whole new feeling of Netflix to the users, and we don't charge anything extra for that. So this is just us expanding what we're offering. The same thing with the Netflix Cup. So it's a way for us to venture into sports without having to compete with the big brands that already dominate sports, but it also allows us to start bringing more innovation to you all, to users, so that you can still feel like, oh, wow, Netflix is still being as innovative as they were when I first heard about them. We even did a Actors Awards on the platform. Previously, these were not on a streaming platform like Netflix. These were on more TV channels, but you see how we're going outside of the areas that people have known Netflix for, so we can always stay ahead of the curve. And I'm really excited about live. There's a lot of cool events coming up in the future as well. Mike Tyson is fighting against Jake Paul. There's other amazing things coming up, so definitely keep your eye out. And I think it's really cool that we don't charge you extra for this. And then we're in video games, which a lot of people don't know that Netflix has ventured into video games. We have about 90 games on iOS and Android. Some people ask and say, well, why would you get into video games? You're into streaming. It's because, once again, we want to be ahead of the curve. We don't think that the video games will cannibalize the streaming. We think the video games is a way to expand on existing content. If you watch Stranger Things and you binge watched it and you loved it, you probably want to watch or play the video game a little bit or do something. You're probably looking for more content from us. So instead of us just saying you have to wait until Stranger Things comes out again, we're saying video games. And there's exclusive content that we could only make the video games to, as well as this is a way for us to try to get the younger, the Gen Zs, all of you young people in the audience that play video games. This is a way for us to make ourselves attractive to you all. And then not only will we do video games, we'll take the video games to the next level and find ways to offer them on laptops, offer them on TV, offer you to be able to turn your phone into a game controller. So if you see, we're always thinking about how do we evolve the platform to match where we think you all feel we should be going. And I'm excited about the video game space. We worked really hard on the video game space. And if you open up your app, just scroll down to a little, you'll see your row. And we don't charge you anything extra to play these games. Once again, if you see, we're not adding more value to the platform and just saying you have to pay more for it. We're trying to make sure you always feel like you're getting your money's worth. So, how to apply business design? 1, empathy. Spend time immersing yourself in the customer's world. 2, think holistic. Consider the entire ecosystem surrounding a product or service so you don't become blockbuster. And 3, prototype, test, and iterate. Continuously test and refine ideas through prototyping, testing, and iteration. You'll get smarter, you'll be happier with the products, your customers will be happier with the products, and I think you'll be a happier designer, happier product manager, happier engineer at the end of the day. You'll just be a happier product person because you'll know that the work that you're doing is correct. And Mad Lobo, thank you.